This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you by Out-of-the-Box Technology. Out-of-the-Box Technology is your partner in accounting data services. With over 7,500 industry migrations performed and an expansive network of third-party integrations, a partnership with Out-of-the-Box will augment your advisory practice and turbocharge client accounting operations. Visit outoftheboxtechnology.com/insightful-accountant to get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Accounting Insiders podcast. My name is Gary Dehart. I am the host of Accounting Insiders and the publisher and managing partner of Insightful Accountant and Tax Practice News. My guest today is Jeff Bartsch, like March with a B, right? Did I get it right?
There you go. Blame the Germans. There's lots of unnecessary letters at the end, but it sounds like the month of March.
Perfect. And so Jeff's the founder of Story Greenlight. And so before I ask you to introduce yourself, so I hopped on your LinkedIn page, and it said transforming accounting advisors into confident, memorable communicators and thought leaders. So welcome. Give us a little bit of background. Tell us what that means. I know what it means, but tell us in your words what that means, and just give us a little quick intro, a little bio, and then we'll get into our discussion.
Sure. Well, as a founder of a company called Story Greenlight, would you believe I have some stories to tell? So with your permission, I'd like to tell one story right here that'll kind of set the stage for things.
Bring it. It has to be at least PG.
Oh,
and under.
It's all good. All good.
Right. Okay.
Family friendly for sure. Exactly. So here's the thing. My name is Jeff Bartsch, and if you look me up online, most people will see that I spent 20 years in Hollywood. And they will say, okay, well, you learned about communication and storytelling from Hollywood, which is true. But the thing that I want to really unpack in our conversation today is the idea that there is a level of where conversation or any communication can be ordinary, but there's also a level where our messaging and our communication can become extraordinary. And that is a lot of what I learned in Hollywood. But really where that started was when I was a kid learning to play piano. I started playing piano classically when I was 4. And for the next 20 years, I was known as Jeff the Piano Guy. And a lot of the times that I was getting my reps in as a musician was in church on Sunday mornings. So I got lots of people saying, "Oh, Jeff, you're such a great piano player." And I thought that was amazing because that gave my little head a little ego stroke. And I thought that was great. And there was one day when this older musician at church pulled me aside and she said, "Jeff, I noticed that you've been playing the notes on the page, and that's great. But when you get older, you need to learn to play from your soul." And, I was 10 or 11 years old at this point, and I thought emotions were dumb. And so I thought this lady was full of it. So I just ignored her because everyone was saying I was doing a great job. And I ignored her for the next years until I started learning more about what it meant to actually take those notes on the page and actually bring the music to life. And when I did learn about that, that's when people started changing the way I responded to what I was doing. Instead of saying, "Jeff, you're so amazing," they would say, "Jeff, that song that you played was the exact song I needed to hear. Thank you for playing that song." Or other times, a few times, people would even say, "Jeff, with the things that are happening in my life, the way that you played today brought me into an encounter with God. Thank you so much for what you do." And that was when I started realizing that number one, this is way bigger than me, and I need to get my ego out of the way. And number two, there is another level beyond. We're all doing the best that we can, playing the notes on our own version of whatever pages we're playing, but there is another level that can really bring this stuff to life. And when you do, that's when people's hearts and minds are changed. And that's what I've done literally my entire life, ever since video production in high school, radio in college, film school, then 20 years in Hollywood. And taking those ideas that I learned in Hollywood and saying, okay, how can we help people elevate their communication? And that is how I transitioned from coaching and working in Hollywood into working specifically in the accounting world with accounting advisors to say, hey, here is how you can take your messaging from the ordinary to the extraordinary. That's the core of what we do.
So how did you actually go to accounting? How did you choose out of, there's a lot of other professions out there. How did accounting end up as the place?
Yeah. It was one of those things where you're walking the path and you're saying, okay, what's the next step in the path? And, I had been, multiple years in my time in Hollywood. I'd started doing coaching work with individuals. And as the years progressed, I started moving more towards communication coaching and story structure and marketing work and all that kind of external messaging kind of things.
Yeah.
And I was working with individuals and with groups. And then there was a group, an accounting firm who does virtual CFO services. And they approached me and said, hey, we're looking to expand. They'd established a niche within serving digital agencies, providing virtual fractional CFO services to digital agencies. And they were looking to expand into other niches and to build their company that way. And so they had in-house experts who had the expertise. But then they said, but the marketing department said, we need help to get these folks to feel comfortable on camera, to know what to say, know how to say it. And I've been working with that company for over a year at this point. And that's what really that helped me say, this is where I like to focus, because I actually feel a lot of kindred, some kinship with the idea of really smart people who sit staring at a computer, scratching their head a lot, because that's actually what I did a lot with my with my time in Hollywood. A lot of people think that Hollywood is always crazy and glamorous, and a lot of it just isn't. So for everyone who's going through ledgers, going through the P&L, going through the balance sheet, and making sure everything lines up, that is not my specific background, but I feel that vibe very much myself.
Okay. All right. So you had some clients who were in accounting, and you thought, wow, I work well with these people.
Yeah.
We've got some things in common. We're speaking the same language at some point. So, and that was, you had already established Story Greenlight at that point. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And so then in the green room, we said recently, oh, sorry, my mother's calling in the background there.
Hi, Mom.
Sorry. Hi, Mom. All right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
That might be one of them that would cut out. Probably not. Now we'll just keep it real. So,
No
so you started Story Greenlight, or you moved again during COVID. I think you were telling me this before. You moved into Ohio, so you're up in Ohio now. And so let's dive into the conversation. And so I've got a few questions that I shared with you prior, but so becoming a thought leader is kind of the question. And the real question is why? All right. So why do I need to do that as an accounting professional? Why? And actually, before you answer that, define what a thought leader is.
Well, that's the $1 million question right there. Yeah. Because when you look up the idea of thought leadership online, nobody agrees on what it is.
Okay.
And everyone says, oh, we all have this idea of capital T, capital L, thought leader. And you're thinking that this exalted person standing on a TED Talk stage or having written a book that hits some big bestseller list. And the fact of the matter is, it's kind of like this is all a subset of something, but all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares, kind of a thing. So when you think about what actually is thought leadership, then the more you think about it, I like to make these ideas accessible to people. Frankly, a lot of what Hollywood does is say, hey, this is we're the ivory tower. We're amazing. You should all be like us. And the fact of the matter is, the world doesn't want to be like Hollywood. The world wants to be an improved, better version of themselves. So when you think about what thought leadership is in a more broad sense, I say thought leadership happens when anyone influences the thinking of someone else. So when you think about that, it's this idea of influencing the thinking of others. That happens anytime, certainly within the accounting context. It happens anytime we want to persuade someone, anytime we need more information from someone, anytime we want to offer a new way of thinking or a new way of doing things. So certainly anyone in the accounting world who interacts with clients is faced, whether you realize it or not, with the opportunity to be a thought leader. So the question is, how do you approach that? And what do you say? And how do you say it? And where do you say it? Because it's also, when you think about the definition of thought leadership, you can say it's influencing the thinking of others, but then how do you actually play that out? Do you write a book? Do you get on a big stage? Or do you have a one-on-one conversation with a client or with a team member? It's all that. It can be anything of that and anywhere in between.
So from your perspective, it's not, or it can be, but it's not the TED Talk, right? That is not,
It doesn't have to be.
That might be one of your, that might be one of your goals. That might be one way to be a thought leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying, and I would say that would be how I would perceive thought leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Would be, oh, well, I'm speaking at all the conferences. People are, asking me questions. I've never really thought about it from the way you worded it, really influencing someone else's thoughts. And certainly our profession, whether you're a bookkeeper, whether you're a CPA, tax person, or business advisor, all day long are influencing people's thoughts. Even
Absolutely.
if whether it's their direct customer, whether they're in a firm that has multiple employees, there's always somebody they're going to be influencing. Okay, so that's actually a whole other view of it for me. So I've learned something already. So the why of that then would be, well, you become a thought leader because you're interacting with people on a very regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from an accounting professional's perspective, they have a lot of knowledge that they need to be sharing with their clients and internally, but I think mostly with their clients. So what is that path then? What does that look like? How do I go from being, Gary CPA, which I'm not, to be very clear, how do I go from being Gary CPA to being Gary CPA thoughtful thought leader?
Yeah. And just for the record, the idea of thought leadership is, it begins as a way of thinking. So you don't even have to ever actually verbalize this to anyone. You don't have to, because, as we've kind of talked about it, the definition is so fuzzy and it's so easily misunderstood. So if you want to just keep this a secret between yourself and between you and yourself, awesome. Yep. But the beginning is, how do we approach this? And, so here's one of the primary tools that I always offer my clients. So get ready to write this down, because this is worth remembering. So when we think about interacting with other people, I always take it to the bigger picture of strategic storytelling. A lot of us know what tactical storytelling is. You're telling a story of something that happened, but it feels familiar, and it's easy for familiarity to breed contempt with something that we think that we already know.
Sure.
But here's the thing: when it comes to tactical stories, we've all experienced it done really well, and we've all experienced it done really badly. And we think that telling a story well is just for the privileged few, for the elite, for the people on the keynote stage, whatever. And the fact is, the power of any time that we've heard a tactical story heard or told to us, the power comes from ideas that operate at the big picture strategic level. And those ideas are available to anyone who wants to engage with them. So here's what the ideas are. It's all based around the idea of what a story is. So for people who are familiar with the idea of Donald Miller and his business called Building a Story Brand, this is based off some of Donald Miller's earlier writings with some things that I've added. I always tell my clients that a story is where a character wants something, overcomes obstacles to get it, and experiences transformation as a result. That is the definition of what a story is. That is the strategic level of strategic level of storytelling. And when you think about it, that provides a foundation of any interaction between any human being for any reason ever. And if people hear me say that and they think, okay, Jeff, you're exaggerating, that's a little hyperbolic. And I would say, no, it's not, because it really is that powerful if you start thinking about it. Back to your point about what is thought leadership? How do you do it? When we approach the idea of thought leadership as influencing the thinking of others, and we plug that idea into this definition of what a story is, it becomes all about who are we influencing? Who are they? Who is the character? What do they want? What is keeping them from getting it? And what is the change that they want to see? And it's our role as people of influence, as people who are advising our clients, to say, okay, who are you? What do you want? What's getting in your way? How can we help you get what you want? That's the big picture of where we start. And so so you can see when people ask, what is the path to thought leadership? It starts by knowing who, well, first of all, what you want to accomplish. Because if your ultimate goal is to get onto the TED Talk stage or write a big book, awesome. If that's your path, awesome. But if your goal is to attract more clients, to retain more clients, or if it's to add a higher level of service to your existing clients, then that changes everything. So you need to start with your goal, start with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey always said, and then you reverse engineer from that. And there are multiple steps that you can dig into within that context. But I've been talking a lot, so I'll let you. I'll let you.
No, that's great. I'm making some notes because actually, as you're talking, I'm like, okay, well, because and it's not just accounting firms, right? I mean, we're a media organization, so it certainly fits for us very well. So I'm making notes for us. So so that's kind of the path. All right, but this obviously is not something that, okay, I listen to Gary and Jeff talk, and now I'm a storyteller.
Right.
It's a time investment, it's a money investment, I would even think in most cases, a change of the way a person thinks. So talk to me about with your average clients, and if there is such a thing, what does that process look like from a time investment standpoint? Because again, I think the mantra for the market is, well, I have more business than I can serve already, and I'm already working 80 hours a week. It's tax season.
Godspeed y'all.
Yeah, right. Where am I going to find the time to do what you're proposing?
Yeah.
And I asked the same question yesterday, not in those words, but a similar question yesterday in a recording around marketing. And kind of the bottom line was, well, you have to make the choice. If that's really what you want to do, kind of like you said, if your end goal is here, well, you're going to either have to make some sacrifices, make some changes, or a combination of the two. But so what is that investment? Let's just talk about time first. What's the time investment of getting from where I am? And I'm sure everybody starts in a different place on the scale, but on average, in working with clients, what's the typical time investment that I'm looking at to go from who I am now to who I want to be?
Sure.
And that's a big, broad question with a lot of variables.
Yeah, it does have a lot of variables, but the cool thing is, it always starts with internal thinking, and taking that strategic story definition and applying it to ourselves. Who am I as the character? What do I want? What do I want to see happen? What's getting in my way? And what is the change that I want to see happen? So, going back to the goals of what you're looking for, if you if you want to keep doing what you're doing, well, and I will say, if you have no interaction with clients and you don't desire to have any interaction with clients, then this will probably not be as applicable. However, if you are in a place where you're saying, I want to bring greater value to my clients, or I want to attract more of the clients, I want to have my existing clients stay longer, then it becomes a function of communication. And you say, okay, well, how long does it take to become an amazing communicator? Well, the fact of the matter is, you can learn some tools. The clients that I work with one-on-one are usually already firmly in the advisory position. This is what they do. And they, we work one-on-one usually for 6 to 9 weeks. And there's a huge amount of progress that happens within that. If you are looking to say, okay, well, I want to be seen as a thought leader, as an influential thinker within the industry, then that's when there are all sorts of variables, and it will take more time to say, okay, well, how am I thinking? What is the extra value? What is the message that I want to say? How do I bring it to the world? And there are lots of variables there. But the encouraging thing is, it all starts as a way of thinking. And it all starts in applying some specific tools to the way we think that affects the way that we communicate to the people that we come into contact with.
And once you have that kind of baseline, right? So I've got this baseline. Now I know, I know kind of the where and why I'm thinking what I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. And I've got an idea on where I want to go. Whether it's client focused, whether it's big stage focused, and you build out a process from there. And you mentioned 6 to 9 weeks in a one-on-one if it's like a client focused. What do you have some success stories or stories that you can share? Names or no names?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Where you've had somebody, I would say there's probably a lot of different people. People are like, oh, I could never be a thought leader. I could never embrace this. To the mm-hmm. person who's like, well, I'm doing this already. But what are some clients you've dealt with and kind of their journeys?
Sure.
That you could share.
Yeah, there's some really, really cool things that happen when you put this stuff into play. And a lot of people think, okay, Jeff, you're talking about communication and story stuff, and I have returns to get out. I have deadlines to hit. I have a whole stack of clients that, I have very tangible things that need my attention. And how does this how's this squishy stuff actually apply to business? And that's when I get to tell people about people like my client, Tom, who is a virtual CFO. He works for Summit Virtual CFO by Anders. And when Tom and I were working together, we were originally working on some of his hosting skills with his podcast work and his webinar work that he does with Summit Virtual CFO. And the thing that was so cool is that the tools that we were using started bleeding over. They start overflowing into his interactions with his clients. And there was a time when we were talking about a specific tool, and I asked, do you have any examples in your mind about a client that you're working with right now? And he said, oh yeah. And he tells me this story about one of the clients that he was serving, and they were working to get their tax return done, and this business, and there was a change in the law that required some changes in the way that the return was filed. And the CEO was not understanding what the issue was. And he was getting more frustrated, and he would start withholding information and all these kind of things, to the point where the director of tax over at Summit said, dude, we can't sign your return. The laws have changed. And so Tom, my client, went to the CEO based on some of the tools that we'd been working with. And in one conversation, not only did he talk the CEO off the ledge and frankly kept the client from leaving, but he brought clarity to the situation and kept that client there with Summit. And Tom estimates that based on their trajectory for when they're going to be acquired and what the client fees are, that saved Summit almost $200,000 in future revenue. One conversation saved a company almost $200,000.
Right.
It's that kind of stuff, because when people talk about the squishy communication stuff, oh, well, that's just, yeah, you can't put numbers on that. Well, the fact of the matter is, anytime one human being interacts with another human being, that squishy intangible stuff has to take place first. That stuff's got to be lined up before you can get to the numbers.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it is a people business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, we have this article that somebody contributed years ago, and I say years, it was probably, I think it was 6 years ago, and it continuously ranks as one of the top articles, from a Google Analytics standpoint. And it was, I think it was I think the title of it's the 8 characteristics every CPA should have or accountant should have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's something that draws people in. And as a profession, don't send me emails, don't send me hate mail. As a profession, I think accountants historically have not necessarily been the ones who want to be outwardly focused.
Right.
And so I think having that tool set, and when you say tools, you're not talking about this software or that hardware. You're
Nope.
talking about when I hear this, then I reply or I respond this way, right?
Yeah, it's
soft skills.
It's different ways of thinking. It's frameworks. It is specific communication tools and putting those into play. And like anything, I mean, just because you have the most amazing saw in the world doesn't mean you're automatically an expert at using that saw.
Right.
So anything like that requires practice to truly become accomplished at it. But the great thing is, everyone who sees folks communicating powerfully and thinks to themselves, oh, well, that's just them. They were born with that, and that's just for the privileged few. Be encouraged. These are all based on skills, and skills can be learned. Anyone can learn them.
Yeah, and I think like going back to your piano analogy, and it's playing with passion, right? And it's embracing the skill set that you're sharing with people, so that they can come to it with a passion. We give our top 100 Provisor awards out each year, and as you were talking about playing with passion, I was kind of thinking about, okay, well, when I present those awards, am I presenting them with passion? Because the way it's presented makes all the difference, as you were saying. I mean, if it's just like, oh, Jeff won this award, oh great, versus if it's so again, nice little learning for me. I got to make sure I need to go back and review that, make sure I am presenting with passion. So going back to the tools, so the tools are how we're communicating what we're hearing from our client, and then how we, I guess, process what we hear and how we give feedback based on the conversation or the client needs, right? And so if I'm an introvert by nature, how do you teach me to not be an introvert? Because that has to be a very big hurdle to overcome.
Sure. The good news is you don't have to be anyone other than who you are.
Okay.
Because it is all about understanding people and interacting with people. So, a number of the clients that I've worked with, some of it has been within that context of, okay, let's take, one of the clients was a former VP of operations at a large operation, $150 million operation. He knew the nuts and bolts of everything in that plant. And the question was, okay, so how can we help him come alive on camera? And the thing is, it's all about helping people just become an upgraded version of themselves. If it's, if you're talking about someone appearing in public, introverts do not have to become extroverts. It's just a matter of learning some skills about how to be who you are and to communicate in a way that truly connects to what your audience actually cares about. And that's where a lot of these tools come in, is understanding things like that core definition of a story. The character who wants something overcomes obstacles to get it and experiences transformation as a result. That's the core one. If you write that down and you put it on your wall, I promise you, you will find ways that that definition will influence any communication you have. And then, of course, there are lots of other tools that we talk about. There are some tools on the limited edition podcast that I'm doing. It's called Speaking of Numbers, Communication Strategy for Accounting Advisors, and digging into these specific tools on how to do that. That's in the process of publishing right now. But one of the things we talk about is something called the thing under the thing. And when people talk about, oh, well, I see a number. Well, that's just the thing that's on the surface. But when your client looks at that number and has a reaction and they feel things about that number, that's something that's the entry point where we get to say, okay, what do I know about my client? What do I know about what they want? What's getting in their way? And all these things, because they are attaching meaning to that number. And that meaning comes from deeper levels of things underneath the surface, what I refer to as the things under the thing. So the number is the thing, the feelings and the meaning that we attach to this are the things under the thing. I could talk about that stuff for hours on end. Yeah. So I'll just stop there. But it is incredibly powerful, and it is available to anyone who wants to learn.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about, before we wrap up, physical tools. So we've talked about kind of some soft tools. Do you have physical tools that you bring into your coaching, like what we're doing right here, right? Getting on a recording of yourself, or having a dialogue with, although I guess over the past 3 years, we've done a lot more of this than we ever have. Yeah. But are there physical tools that you bring into play as well to help people refine and hone their skills?
Yes. Asterisk. Yeah. It is completely dependent on what your goal is. Okay. Because as a, if your goal, I happen to know you're a big fan of fly fishing. If your goal is to do what you do, use technology to compress what you do so you have more time to be out fly fishing, there's very little that may not have any need for any extra physical tools at all. However, if you are in a place where you are an advisor and you want to, and you have very strong beliefs about, this is what the industry is doing, and this is what I believe, and this is how we can help you get what you want with these ideas, and you want to spread those ideas as far as possible, absolutely. There are physical tools, microphones, cameras, lights, all that kind of stuff, all those kind of things. But those are way, way downstream. A lot of people, when it comes to marketing, messaging, social media, all these kind of things, it's easy to focus on the doing, the end doing, but the tricky stuff and the far more important stuff is the strategic thinking upstream. And that's what I help my clients with. Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. So what about, so we talked about time investment. I don't know if it's fair, if you can even throw out like a money investment. Not sure if that's, I imagine the way your business works, it could be, $1 to some, multiple of dollars, right? Based on what it is that the client's working for. What's, maybe instead of asking that, because again, it's not like you have a rate card that says, oh, I charge this.
The answer is it depends on what people want to see happen.
Yeah. I would think so. I would think it depends on where you are, where you're trying to get to, how much time's involved. So your business, are you going to client locations? Are you doing mostly virtual like this? What does your day-to-day look like?
As of right now, it's exclusively virtual.
Okay.
I work with clients one-on-one, work with cohorts of company employees, depending on what their company leadership wants. So it just it depends on the client themselves.
Okay.
And yeah,
Then
the world is very is increasingly comfortable with remote these days.
yes, absolutely. So how do people find you?
There is one place. There's one place that I would love your listeners to go, and that is to storygreenlight.com/insiders, as in accounting insiders. So when you go to storygreenlight.com/insiders, you will get a link to my podcast. We also have a resource there where you can actually start. There's a checklist that we have there about how you can actually collect some of your personal elements and start putting them together into a core story that you can use within your own messaging. And of course, if there's a time then that you want to have personal help, that's what we do. And there's a way to get in touch there.
Okay, fantastic. Now, what about events? Are you on the speaking circuit? Do you have intentions of getting on the speaking circuit? Do you want to do that?
You know what? I'm open to that. I'm not currently focusing on speaking in person much, but that is definitely an avenue to explore for sure.
Okay. Yeah, because we definitely have seen, so this market, I've been in this market for a long time now. And I would say 15 years ago, seemed like there was a conference or a trade show every week, if not every day. I mean, it was just like, it was insane. Every state society or association had something. There was just always something going on. And that kind of started narrowing down, especially the bigger events kind of narrowed down, I would say 8, 9 years ago. And then COVID came, right? And COVID just, smashed all of them. And now we've gone from zero at COVID, maybe one during COVID to, boom, we're ramping back up. So that's, events are certainly part of this space and certainly part of this market. And it is a great place to go and meet people, go and find people within the space. So, so that's why I always ask that question is, if you're going to be out and about, where might that be? But right now we want to point people over to storygreenlight.com/insiders. And any parting thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would say at the end of the day, we are not, as you say, we are not here for the numbers. We are here for the meaning in the lives of the people whom we serve. When you think about what a story is, helping people find the change that they're seeking in their life and helping them overcome their obstacles, that is really what we do. We're not about just cleaning up the books. It's about, what do clean books mean for the client? What kind of insights can the client see from the data, and how can we help our clients use that data to build their business, to serve more people, and to bring change for their clients and their customers in the world. So this is really about bringing change into the world. It is an incredibly exciting thing to be part of. It is incredibly inspiring, and it is so cool that it's within reach of all of us.
That's awesome. Well, we will leave it on that. Jeff, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer than that today, just to actually it's an introduction for us, because we had not met one another prior to this. So certainly appreciate what you're doing. Love to get you back on here a couple of months, have another follow-up conversation. Also, we hadn't talked about it, but if you do any writing, certainly feel free to send some contributed content over to insightfulaccountant.com, and we'd be happy to post it. We have basically 3 things that we look for unique to us, that it's just not, non-commercial in nature, and it's not full of do follow links to where you're we'll put a bio in there. But certainly if that is part of your process, part of your plans, and you're producing content, we'd love to take a look at it because I'm sure that our audience would benefit from it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben.
Absolutely. Thank you. Talk soon.
This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you in part by Xero. Xero is a powerful cloud accounting software that improves efficiencies across your practice. With all client data stored on a single unified ledger, you and your clients can easily access and collaborate on the same set of books. Xero's advisor tools and automation solutions reduce time-consuming manual tasks and put data entry on autopilot. Work faster and more efficiently than ever before with Xero. Visit xero.com/accountinginsiders to learn more.